Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sofia and today we are going to be looking at all of the books that I have read in the month of April. I found a new favorite, but besides that I had a lot of bad luck with books. I DNF'd 3. Let's not talk about it. Okay, let's just dive right in. We started off with Silence is Golden by Robert Thayer, which is the third book in the Silence and Storm series. It's on Wattpad for free. Wow, this was a really big letdown. We still follow Mr. Ambrose, who's one of the most powerful men in London, and then his secretary, who has to dress up as a man, but he knows that she's not a man because she's a woman. And this book, okay, to describe it in one word, cringe. It was so cringy. I do not think that I could have possibly cringed harder. We got to go to the jungle, which was really fun. It was super unrealistic. Like, they broke out of 2 prison cells from different rebel forces in the Amazon. Two, they broke out of 2 prison cells. Lily also needs to work on the meaning of consent. There was a very troubling scene that it was so gross. There were a lot of large chunks of Portuguese that just went unexplained. It was very confusing and kind of took me out of the story. Also, I couldn't copy and paste from Wattpad, so sometimes I'd go to Google Translate and have to type in every single word to figure out what they were saying, and sometimes the things that they were saying were kind of relevant to the story. We need some more character development from Mr. Ambrose. He's just this flat, one-dimensional, grumpy guy. We're not seeing anything more from him. It's getting a little bit boring and there's no real progress happening in their relationship. So yeah, I would skip it. The first 2 were great in the series, but I don't think I'll continue. I, all in all, would probably give it 3 stars more because I liked the first 2 books in the series, and yeah, just for nostalgia of that, I'm giving it 3 stars as opposed to lower. I then went on to read Ashes in the Moor by Sarah M. Eden, and I don't know, I knew that I wasn't going to like it. I was very sure that I wasn't, and I was right. I was so right. Okay, let's describe it. So we follow Evangeline, whose whole family dies except for her younger sister, and then her evil aunt separates her from, if you want to know the time period, we're like late 1800s, like 1870 something. So her evil aunt separates her from her sister, and she is forced to become a teacher. She doesn't have any training in being a teacher. Obviously, as soon as she starts teaching, like within a couple days, she struggles a little bit in the beginning, but then ends up being this fantastic teacher. There's a single dad, and she and the single dad end up getting feelings for each other. The first half of the book, I admit, was very exciting, but then became really depressing. Like, it just kind of went downhill. I would have loved to hear the perspective of Ronan, which is her love interest's son who is autistic. I think his perspective would have been the most interesting. It would have been fun to hear from him. And then the aunt was so evil that she almost became a caricature. It was just really unrealistic. The end was freaking weird. I don't know. I gave it 3 stars. The beginning was really fun and really exciting, and it was nice to watch her struggle a little bit, but then her teaching ability just went like that, and suddenly she was this really amazing teacher. Then read Promises and Primroses. It's another historical romance. Wow, it was not good. Basically, widower Lord Mayfield, he needed a governess, so he hires Julia, and he's really mean to Julia because she's pretty. And he never wants to fall in love again because he's a widower. And yeah, and then he's really mean for the first half and is trying to fire her, and her mom doesn't want her to work there because her mom wants her to be close to her. I really wanted to like this book. It was like almost a little bit Sound of Music vibes. I love Sound of Music, so I was like, okay, cool, governess trope, love to see it. Maybe Jane Eyre vibes. Never read Jane Eyre, but I've heard it's good. Oh, but no one in this book had a personality. Nope. Julia, let's describe Julia. She was nice. She was pretty. She was sweet. That's it. That's it. Sometimes she grew a little random backbone and was overly mean to her mother. She was awful to her mom. I was like, how could you speak to her that way? Like, yeah, your mom is meddling a little bit, but like, calm down, girly. Like, she raised you by herself for a long time because her father had died. Amelia, Julia's mother, had really fickle motives. Like, I just couldn't believe that that's why she wanted to ruin everyone's plans. Like, I don't know, her reasoning made absolutely no sense. It was just literally a plot device. And her solution to everything going on, Amelia's solution, would have made everyone, including herself, unhappy, and especially would make her daughter unhappy, which it seems to be her whole purpose, is try to make the daughter happy. And you're like, with your girly pop, what are you doing? Peter, our love interest, the Lord, he was so whiny. It was very frustrating to be in his head. He just whined about how much he liked Julia. And he said that he never liked any of the other governesses because they weren't pretty. The only difference between Julia and the other governesses was that she liked dogs and was pretty. And no character development was done in anyone because everyone was just pretty and had no personality. I mean, and he even mentioned that he was shallow. He said it, it's not just me. He said it. I'm having trouble justifying not giving this 1 star. I'm gonna give it 2, but it could go either way, 1 or 2. I don't know. Then I read Summer of You. I DNF'd it. It was just like a boring, basic historical romance. So then they threw in a highwayman. They would mention him extremely randomly. Like, there was no rhyme or reason for the times that they brought up the highwayman, and then we would forget about him, like, the next chapter. DNF'd it. I could not take it. Well, the next book actually ended up being one of my new favorite romances, and it is Beard Science by Penny Reed. I had read, last month I think, I read the second book in the series, and I gave it 2 stars because I really, really didn't like it. But this one, okay, let me explain the synopsis. Jennifer has super controlling parents. They want her to work 7 days a week at the bakery and then also manage the social media account, even though she's not really into social media, and she's very shy and has a little bit of social anxiety. She doesn't really like to talk to people, but her parents want her to be this TV personality. They want her to get her own cooking show. She sees Cletus, one of the Winston brothers that the series follows. She sees Cletus do something kind of illegal and then blackmails him into helping her get out of her situation. And it was fantastic. It was a very character-driven novel, but the plot still felt like it was moving because Cletus and Jennifer were both growing as people. They were both getting better in terms of their social interactions. Jennifer, you could see her getting more confident, and Cletus becoming a better person and less manipulative and evil and scary. Their dynamic was just so sweet and hilarious. I was laughing out loud through most of it. There was a lot of emphasis actually focused on independence and respect, which is so rare in romance, and it was really nice to see that Cletus was not being overly possessive or controlling over Jennifer. He gave her homework assignments to try to make her a better person in the ways that she saw fit to. My one criticism would be that the end felt very drawn out and we lost a lot of the comedic elements, so it was just kind of a struggle to get through the very end. But overall, I thought it was a great book, and it's a really solid introduction to romance. Okay, then I started, The Chase by Elle Kennedy, and we follow Summer, who constantly throws herself at her brother's best friend, who is outwardly very disinterested. I got through not a lot of it before I couldn't take it anymore. I just didn't like how she constantly tried to flirt with him and get to him and like ask him out multiple times, and he was just not interested. And I don't like a guy that's not interested. I want both parties to be very interested and invested in the relationship, and I didn't see that there. So I DNF'd it. I couldn't take it anymore. And also I just couldn't relate to Summer. She was very confident, party girl, but almost to the point of arrogance. So yeah, I would skip it if I were you. I then started, DNF'd, A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Okay, I did enjoy what I read. Here's a clip of me enjoying it. I think Martin is doing a really good job of making flawed humans. Like, we have Jamie, who is very attractive, he's confident, he's funny, he cares for his brother, who is a dwarf, and he's one of the only people who care for his brother. But he does some really awful things. And Lady Stark, she's a fantastic mother, fantastic wife. She's very strong. I mean, her husband is willing to entrust her with the whole of the North. In a society where women are, belittled and aren't respected, he respects her enough to give her power of all of the North. But she is horrible to her husband's bastard. Horrible. Like, it's so sad to see that. So every character, they have positives and they have negatives, and it's hard to say, you can't fully love one character because they're so flawed, but it makes them so interesting to read about. So it's starting to pick up and I'm liking it more. But I've seen the TV show, so I know what's gonna happen. I wasn't allowing myself to get attached to the characters that I knew were going to die. And so I couldn't finish it. Also, the writing was a little bit dense for me. It was kind of difficult to get through. It didn't flow as naturally as I would have liked it to. Are you ready? I have a physical book. Look at how beautiful this is. Okay, so then I read Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and then I started tabbing it until I got really, really bored with the book and just decided that I was going to skim read and power through the rest. I'm not going to give you a synopsis of the book. You know why? Because if I gave you a synopsis of the book, you would tell me that I was crazy and that this sounded like a really good story and that you would want to read it, because that's where I was, okay? And you're going to be like, oh, Sophia, there's no way that this is bad. I will have to disagree with you on that, sir. Okay, I'm going to stop abusing this book. The plot, non-existent. Romance, bland. Main characters, even blander. Jace was a nice mafia boss. You want me to give you an example of that? He was like, oh, you owe me money, right? If this person owed him money, pay me back next time. And you're like, no, you can't, you gotta be tougher. You gotta be tough, badass mafia boss. That's what I signed up for. Kazi is a knockoff Walmart version of Inej from Six of Crows. She's like, oh yeah, I'm master of the shadows, and then less than 50 pages in, she gets kidnapped in a really silly goose way. Like, she just walks into the trap, and you're like, master of shadows where? Like, she didn't hide in the shadows, she just walked through, and you're like, okay. The action sequences were actually awesome. I loved the action. It's too bad that it was such a minor part of this book. If only it was so well written. When I tell you the perhaps 50 pages that was action, I was engaged. The rest, I was skimming through it. I literally had to push myself to finish this to give it a fair review, because a lot of people said that it picked up at the end, but the little bit that it picked up was way too little, too late. Okay, let me read you some of my feedback. Okay, let's see. At the very end, this is how I felt right after reading the whole book. Well, my friends, we made it through one of the most boring fantasy romances ever created. I hope your next read is much better. Okay, let's start where I first got mad, which was 12 pages in. Snove says, do you think they've done it? Ren groaned. I was hoping she meant anything else. I asked anyways. Who did what? Eben and Latia, you know it? I don't know, that just felt very juvenile. It was like, okay, I'm definitely reading YA. Like, this is definitely a YA thing, but keep in mind, these are 17-year-olds. And I was like, okay. Then, on page 24, they start listing characters. See, okay, we have Gunnar, Priya, and Titus, and we've never met any of these people before, right? Gunnar, Priya, and Titus knelt on one side of me, Jaylene, Samuel, Aram, and Mason on the other. So we've just gotten this huge list of characters that we have no idea. I just don't understand the purpose of that. Like, I don't know who you are. There were some parts where the writing was beautiful. Like here, her eyes were tight azure stones and appeared to float disembodied in the black shadow of her hood. Beautiful writing there, but then it's just inconsistent, right? Like, we have lists of characters, like very sloppy writing, and then these beautiful chunks. I'm so confused. Okay, then here, this is on page 28. In between chapters, we get these weird, like, poem-styled, poem-styled snippets from Jace's ancestors, and they no context. And it just took me out of the story. And then we were being introduced to so many people. We've been introduced to all of Kazi's friends, Jace's family and friends, and now his ancestors are randomly coming up, and we're not even 20, 30 pages in. Whew. It did have some non-competitive female friendships, which was nice to see, but Jesus. Here I said, I understand that this is a fun fantasy romance, but it does not feel epic enough. The romance is taking up too much of the plot, and I'm not a fan of the couple. Oh, do we want to see where they had their first kiss? Okay, here. At page 114, right there, this is the rest of the book, right? They had their first kiss here. And you're like, okay, so the rest is this, like, superficial angst that is just not even that angsty. It was just way too early for that first kiss to happen. I would have liked to see more development in terms of their friendship. We don't really get to see a good, solid friendship between Jace and Kazi. Oh, they also, you know why I was saying that it was similar to Six of Crows? They had a saying, because in Six of Crows, there's no mourners, there are no funerals. And here, their saying is blink last. Like, you should be the last person to blink. No mourners, no funerals, because nobody dies. They have some really cheesy lines, like, yes, I want to kiss you, Jace Ballinger, not for show or to make the best of it. I want to kiss you because I want you. Every part of you, even the parts that infuriate me beyond telling, because you've infected me with a poison that I don't want to flush out, because you're a mad viper twisting around my middle, cutting off my breath. Yet I want you more than I want to breathe. Yes, Jace, I want to kiss you just because I do, but the one thing I cannot do is promise you any tomorrows. I can't tell you how bored I am. What is the purpose of this scene? Bro, why is Jason so bland? He is a flavorless, nice guy. We need mafia. Yeah. Goes to show I didn't really like this. I'm giving it 2 stars because I was bored, but there was some beautiful writing and the action scenes were very engaging, and I did really enjoy the action scenes. There wasn't anything overly problematic that I found here. It was just boring. So, yeah, 2 stars. And we made it to the last book. That was a rant, if I've ever ranted. And we finished the month on the high by one of the most beautiful authors that I've ever read from, and that is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. So Mr. Dashwood dies and leaves his whole fortune to his son, and his son's wife convinces him not to give an adequate amount to his half-sisters and stepmother. So they are forced to leave and find a different house. And they have this new little cottage, and it is the romance between, well, there are 3 daughters, and the 2 older daughters, Eleanor and Marianne, have romances. Basically, we're mostly in the shoes of Eleanor. Eleanor had a very level head, whereas Marianne is more whimsical and follows what she loves. Jane Austen's writing is truly exceptional. And for being over 200 years old, this book has stood the test of time. There was nothing overly problematic that I could see. There was so much respect for all of the women in the story. It was fantastic. Eleanor was my favorite character. She held herself with so much self-respect and grace. She was level-headed. I thought her decision-making, all of her reasons made sense to me. And Austen did an exceptional job with Mr. Willoughby in making him a truly gray character. He wasn't evil, he wasn't good, he had his own motives, but they were coming from a place of somewhat good, and in some ways he was very selfish. What I really didn't understand, however, was Colonel Brandon and his love for Marianne. So Colonel Brandon is like 35 and Marianne is 17. And Marianne does not give Colonel Brandon the time of day. Like, they barely talk. Colonel Brandon only really speaks to Eleanor for most of the book. And he's somehow in love with Marianne. Like, she was just this selfish, annoying girl. And Eleanor was this poised, put-together young woman. And I didn't get why he didn't love Eleanor. And Eleanor was into Edward, who was this really boring guy. Like, he was just kind of nice, and that's it. Colonel Brandon and Eleanor could have been together, and they would have made a much better couple. Overall, I thought this was the perfect comfort read. Because I was so annoyed by Colonel Brandon and Marianne's relationship, though, I gave it 4 stars. It was also a little bit long and slow, but it's like, what do you expect from a classic? It's written over 200 years ago, but overall, it was just a very good comfort read, and it felt like home. It was just a really nice time. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing about my tumultuous reading experience this past month. This month, May, has so far been going absolutely fantastic in the reading department. I cannot wait to share with you what I'm reading right now because it is so good. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!